So today we're going to talk about like generosity, giving, things along those lines. And no worries, I'm not going to have you guys like black or wall stands or anything like that. If you want to, I'm not going to stop you. But Priya and I talked and we really wanted to discuss generosity. We've done that once before, so we'll hit some old points and then we're also going to bring up a few new points.
Okay.
I'm going to be introducing the topic to you guys. So the first thing that I thought of whenever it came to giving, I don't know why it popped in my head, but do you guys ever get those emails where someone's like, you have a dead uncle or whatever, and now there's like $10 million for you, blah, 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 blah. You just need your social security or your bank account routing number or something like that.
No, I've heard of people who've gotten this.
You know, those emails, I was thinking, they're so absolutely ridiculous. Like, how does some guy named like Arad Pashay from the Middle East know some uncle that I never knew I had, and now there's millions of dollars, sitting around. It's kind of ridiculous. But using that, it kind of got me to think about how we can become guarded towards our giving, because there's these people out there that want to take from us, that kind of instantly throws up a wall whenever it comes to being generous or giving. Because whenever people do reply, there's always that one friend that's posting on Facebook like, I can't believe it, I just lost all my money. I should have never do that. They're ranting about it. They couldn't believe how they got messed over, and I was like, this is so obvious. But that kind of builds up walls. And something that happened to me recently is I had a wall knocked down, probably about a year ago or something like that. Now I want to get into the definition. Giving or generosity. I have two definitions for you guys. I found them pretty interesting. Generosity is the quality of being kind and generous. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's cool. So generosity isn't just giving. That's a big thing that hit me. Generosity is kindness. So whenever you hear a message about generosity, everyone's like, oh, well, they just want my money or they just want my time. But they're also trying to reveal this degree of kindness to giving. There is a kind way to give, and there's an unkind way to give. That's what I was thinking. I was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting to take it from that perspective, because I always thought it was just plain giving. I didn't know generosity dealt with your heart and how your goodwill towards other people and whatnot. It really kind of goes deep. And then getting into the word generous, someone asked me if we have a definition of generous, and I do from Google. Showing a readiness to give more of something as money or time than is strictly necessary or expected. So to be generous or generosity is this, first off, I would like to point out it's kindness. It's this extra degree of goodwill. And then also, on another level, it's willing to go above and beyond. You're not just doing the normal, you're not just doing the basic. There's something within the generous person's heart that makes them go, I want to go the extra mile. I really want to go ahead and go beyond. So getting into, anytime you guys hear about generous or generosity, I think these people are, whenever you're being talked to about it, and kind of what we're trying to show to you guys, is it's the next level. It's not the normal level of doing something. It's really calling people to the next level. And I have a story, a personal story, that helped me understand why having a generous heart is much more important than having a giving heart. All throughout life, I've always kind of been nice to people. That's like, oh yeah, I'm so nice to people. It's like something I'll pat myself on the back for. I've always had this kind heart towards people. And in the past, I used to think it was pretty cool, right? And then as life went on, I found I wasn't so kind. I wasn't so generous. You start to realize, oh my gosh, there's these people that put me to shame. And then I have these issues within my own heart. I'm not as cool as I thought I was. And this kind of, I'm going to use your stereotypical story. Whenever people come to you asking for money on the street, that's kind of where my story goes. I understand it's really stereotypical, but I want you guys to focus on what happened within my heart and what my perspective was. So, in the beginning, I was the kind of guy that, okay, if they want money, I'll just give them money. Right? Maybe like $1 or something like that. That was just the way I was. And then, that was like back in high school or something, when we were like, oh, everything's good, I'm just going to go help the world. Then I learned, through experience and through asking questions, these people are lying to me. They're not going to this place to spend this money. These people that walk up to you on the street, they're not telling you the truth half the time. Because I would ask them, what are you going to do with my money? And they'd tell me, and I'd go home and Google it. It didn't even exist. So this is the walls, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm being had. I can't believe these people digging in my wallet and they're not using my money for this family use it for. And all they have to do is talk to me and ask for it. So I started to kind of get this wall up and this idea that I am only going to give when I know it's going to be used well. I am only going to give of myself to others when I know they will do well with it. And I'm not going to give it to anybody who's lying. I'm not going to give it to anybody who's going to go use it on something else. Or anything like that, you know? And I felt pretty good about it because there was one time when I was in downtown Fort Worth and this person told me what they're going to do with my money and I laughed in their face, right? And at the time, I told them, you know, that's not even real. You can't even do that. And I felt pretty good because I was like, that person's not going to waste my money. And I walked away. But then I noticed throughout the next few weeks or throughout the next few months, I noticed I felt smart and I felt like I was investing my money well because I wouldn't just give it away. But I realized my heart was starting to kind of harden towards everybody. Every single person I would start looking at and going, what are they going to do with what I give to them? You know? And then I would think a lot about the people that misused what I gave them, my time and money and whatnot. And it really started to kind of dominate my mind. And then one day I just kind of noticed that. I noticed that I was growing hard and callous and I was so concerned with the end result of what I was doing that I didn't realize that my own heart was starting to turn, right? So there's a turning point. It's kind of a slightly emotional story. But there was one day I was driving home from school. I was like, should I tell us these guys? You have to know maybe. It's sad, but it has a real good point to it. I was driving home and there's this guy on this road, right? And he's like some young dude begging for money. You know? First of all, like, young dude, go work at McDonald's. You know, why are you begging for money? You know, there's all these, again, that kind of hardness. And I had that in the beginning. But there was one day I saw him and I was thinking, you know what? I don't like what's inside of me. I'm going to maybe give him some money or something. And this is where it really hit. Somebody said something to him or hit him with their car or something like that. And I just saw how hurt and how devastated he was. And he went over to the side of the road and he just started crying. Right? And this is when I'm in the middle with the struggle. And I'd like to say I got out and I helped him and all this other stuff, but there were cars behind me and I kept going. You know, but in the moment, right before I saw that, I had this thought that, okay, I'm going to give him the money. And I saw all of this. And then something really hit me. And what hit me was, you know, with these people and with my mindset, they might not be going and using my money to the best, but they're in pain. Their lives are not good. You know, this is kind of their bread and butter, going and asking for money. Like we go to work, they just go and ask people for money. But I just saw how hard life was for them in that moment. And, you know, and how someone who had let their heart grow hard hit him so directly that day. You know, I didn't see any fists, I didn't see a car hit him or anything, but I could see it in his face. Somebody did something that really just devastated him. And as I was like passing on that day, I said, never again will I ever look at somebody and try to dissect them and discover whether or not their intentions for my help is good for them. I realized, first off, this will help me. This will give me a good heart with my stuff, and I realized I slowly started to become happier and much more, and it affected everybody around me, not just the beggars. It affected my friends, my family, and everything. I was treating them better. So that's kind of how I wanted to start you guys off with this, and Priya's going to get into much more detail. But that was my own little personal story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, Priya, take it away.
That was good. Well, generosity is actually one of my favorite topics to speak on because I actually work in fundraising, and I've been in fundraising for over 6 to 8 years now as a career. So I've met a lot of generous people through that, okay, from multi-millionaires who are, if you look at the person, you never knew they had money, okay? They lived in a trailer park, but they were generational givers. They were blessed, and the Lord has blessed them. And you know, one day this lady decided to write a $10 million check to the university that I worked at. I kid you not. She drives a Toyota Prius. She doesn't drive a Ferrari. Okay, very simple life, but a heart for generosity. And I learned a lot from working with people like that. And then I have a mom and dad who are very generous people. My dad grew up with next to nothing. His father passed away when they were little, so he had almost practically raised himself, is what I would say, and had very little to go around in the house. He was one of 7 children. His mom didn't have a job, so the oldest brother was working and taking care of everyone else, and so they had very little to go around. So, but my dad was a very hardworking man, and he was in business and he was very successful. And the Lord called him into ministry, so the Lord told him to give up his business and come into ministry. So that's kind of hard. So he kind of transitioned halfway. Okay, I'll still do part-time business and I'll come in part-time ministry, just to see how this goes. And then the Lord finally said, no, I want you to come into full-time ministry. I will provide for you. So I'm seeing how blessed my father has become by giving to others. Okay? When I was a little girl, my dad would bring in this homeless guy who was, Daniel has heard this story from me before. He was a scientist who went crazy. Okay, he was just a very smart man. He just went crazy, and then he started running around the streets, and the family didn't want to take him in just because he was out of control. And so sometimes he'll come to our home in India. This was in India. He'll just start talking to us about these, this research that he has found and this and that, and you're like, a homeless guy who speaks profound English. It's so weird, and my dad had such compassion on him. So my dad would bring him in, wash him up, give him a hot meal. Just to know, we all know he's going to go right back into the street, because he doesn't know you. He has a compassionate heart, so he always did that for people who could never bring him back, Then eventually he started an orphanage and took care of 2 disabled, lots of orphanages in India, but over 4,000 children. This guy who came from nothing could take care of that many people. And it all started with just one person at a time, right? So I had the privilege of growing with the examples of generosity. And so today I'm going to talk to you about different types of generosity, right? Did you guys know that America is one of the most giving nations in the world? These stats I'm going to read to you are probably going to blow you away, because it blew me away when I'm in philanthropy, so I'm very curious about numbers and how much people get. So last year Americans gave $373.25 billion. $373 billion of money was given in philanthropy to help. Okay. This replaced a 4.1 increase from 2014. Okay. How does that apply to an average household? An average household contribution was $2,974. Most American people give. Okay. Isn't that fascinating to learn? And then the corporate giving in 2015 was $18.4 billion. Foundations giving. Foundation is like when somebody has so much money and they set up a trust, and then out of the interest it goes into, they have so much money that the interest every year would go into giving other. Does that make sense? So that's what a foundation is. That was $57.19 billion. And then the largest source of charitable giving came from individuals. That is, of the $373 billion, $268 billion of those came from individuals who gave, not from family or corporations. That means we have a lot of generous people in America. Isn't that awesome to know that our country believes in giving? So I'm giving you all these stats, about how people give. What are some places that they give to? Religion, education, human services, health, right? Most of the time that's what, sometimes you don't even know how, when you go into a hospital, something is underwritten for you because someone else donated toward that. So there's a lot of different ways people give. But why give? Why do we give? Okay? 26 says the righteous gives and does not hold back. If you are a righteous man of God or a woman of God, you want to give. Okay? So I was reading this story earlier today. It's not so much righteous, but I'll share it with you anyway. A pig and a chicken were walking through a poor section of a city. Okay, the chicken said to the pig, "Look at all those hungry people. Let's give them ham and eggs for breakfast." Okay? The pig said, "Wait a minute. For you, it's a donation. But for me, it's a sacrifice." And so, for some people to give is a donation. Let's not talk about chicken. Well, we eat chicken and pig all the time. So, we don't, for some, really it's just a donation. It's out of the abundance you're giving. But for some others, you're giving out of your sacrifice. Okay? Even though it's a funny story, it applies to our life, right? Giving doesn't always mean because you have an abundance and that's what you're giving. Laying an egg for a chicken is not abundant, right? It's like, I'm going to lay one anyway. So so that's how, for somebody who's like, we're thinking about all these Americans who are so rich, well, they got the money, so they should give anyway. Do you ever think about that? He drives a Ferrari. You should give anyway. I don't have much. Why would I give? Have you ever thought about that? I have at some points in my life. It's not about whether you have much or not. It's the attitude that you are righteous. And because you're righteous, you're a man of God or a woman of God, and you're giving somebody who's in need. It's easy to give when you know you love the Lord, and what does John 3:16 says? God so loved the world that He gave. That's a generous God. He sacrificed something for us, right? And so Deuteronomy 16:17 says, "Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which He has given you." So I'm going to talk about different types of giving, but according to the scripture, every man shall give as he's able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which He has given you. How many of you in here can say you're blessed? Okay? You're blessed. All of us are blessed. Okay? And I'm going to go into that next. How are you blessed? How am I blessed? And then so we give to those who are in need. We give because we're obeying the Lord. And thirdly, we give to be blessed in return. What? Do you really do that? Yeah, we do. Because the Bible says, Deuteronomy 15:10, "Give generously to Him and do so without grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to." So is there a giving that you can give in order to get something in return? Absolutely. The Bible says so. If you give, and you give not with a grudging heart, but with a heart that's kind, the Lord will actually reward you for that. Okay, we talked about why give. Now we're talking about what can you give. Okay, number one, I always say time, talent, and treasure, because it's easy to remember, right? Time, talent, and treasure. How many of you think you have more time than I do? Anyone? Anyone has 25, 26 hours in your day? No? Okay, good. I have 24 hours, you have 24 hours. How are you using that 24 hours? I was telling Daniel last year, I'm such an energetic person. I don't know why. God wired me that way. So I can't be still for too long. So I'm always doing things, going places. So last year, before I was in a relationship with Daniel, I was volunteering every single night. I was out doing something. And that's not because I was bored, because I want to use my time wisely. Okay? I want to give in an area where I know that I have the ability to. Gateway Church has 8,000 volunteers. The church that we attend has 30,000 members. 8,000 people volunteer on a regular basis. Yeah, volunteering is the way to do. You may not have a whole lot of money. It doesn't matter if you're giving your time in service to the Lord, or prison ministry, or children's ministry, whatever it may be, you can get involved. Community service, we went to pick up trash, right? The community actually stayed pretty clean after that second time around. Talent. For instance, epic people here, the ones who play in the band, right? You have a talent, you're not getting paid for it, but you're using it in order to bless the community. Does that count? Absolutely yes. So there's, if you're gifted in something, you are a plumber, you're so gifted, you work on you do a lot of professional things as a plumber, and you find out somebody next door who can't afford a plumber to come and fix something, you just you offer them your service, that's giving. Okay? So those are the different ways to give. And we already talked about this, time, talent, and treasure. Okay? Is this house a treasure? Yes, Cindy and Jeremy opened it up for us to come in. It's a blessing, right? Can you guys put your hands together for them? And say,
you're welcome.
yeah, so, what do you consider a treasure? Anyone? What's a treasure? Something of value, right? So money usually counts as something of value. Stocks, which translates into money. That's treasure. A house, a car, right? Those are all things that we are able to give to bless others. You may not have 2 cars to bless. When I first moved to America, my parents and I didn't sell everything in India. So when we came here, we had $10,000, 5 kids, mom and dad. That does not go for a long time. The minute you put a rental agreement, you got to pay the first month's rent plus the last month's rent, okay? And then we just had a little bit to go around because we had to buy stuff. We had pastoral friends in Tampa, Florida that blessed us. So one of the pastors said, hey guys, if you have an extra pair of pots in your house, and you want to give it to the Arols, they're going to take it. They moved from India and they really are in need. And so people started blessing it with couches and beds and all these things. The coolest thing though, I was in need of a car, and I was tired of driving back and forth with my cousins, and I go to school. So I was like, okay, it's getting kind of old, I need my own car. So I remember one day I was back in my room and I cried out to the Lord and said, Lord, we were so blessed in India. I had drivers, I had maids who were taking care of me. And here I'm like a nobody. Nobody knows me, nothing, I have nothing. We're blessed for every donation we've received from the church, the couches, the bed, and all of that. But I really, really need a car. I was on my, international, right? Move is never easy. So I was on my knees crying out to the Lord. My mom was knocking on the door and said, hey, Priya, so auntie, I call her auntie, but she's really not my auntie in love by Christ. And so one of my dad's friends called me and said, hey, my husband and I were thinking we have 3 cars and he only needs 1 and I need the other. And we want to give you the other car that we have sitting on the garage. And it's a Lincoln car, town car. Okay? And she said, not only that, God told me to give that to you last week, but I wanted to go 1 extra mile and buy you the insurance for 6 months. So I had to go through the paperwork in order to get that completed. And that's why it took me this long. So, okay, before I was on my knee asking the Lord for provision, He had already commanded my supplies. Isn't that awesome? God is able to do that. And it only was able because someone was generous, that they were willing to let go of a car. And on top of that was going to pay for insurance. Mm-hmm. So, if you are so blessed, you should be able to give others. But what happened when I started making my own money, and I was a youth pastor, and I was making money, and I was blessed, and I no longer needed this car, and I went and bought my own car, I gave that away to another single mom who didn't have a car. Okay? Anyone heard of paying it forward? Mm-hmm. Have you guys heard of a story that some lady who came through a donut shop one day, decided she had a bad day. And she just thought, what could I do that make other people's day awesome? Because I'm having a bad day, I want to change this. So she said, hey, can I pay for the next car? Whatever they ordered, so it was like $12. So she took the ticket. And then the next person said, well, if somebody paid for it, that's awesome. Let me pay for the next one. So it was like 55 cars later, this kept going on. Paying it forward. You have the ability to change, bring change in others. Okay? You may not have money, you may not have treasures, you may not have talent, you do have time. You may not have a lot, but a smile can go a long way. Okay? So we talked about what can be there, and now we're going to talk about ways to get. Mother Teresa, anyone know who that is? Why do you know that? This lady was in India and she's Italian. Why do you know that?
For her charities and her deeds.
Mm-hmm. She's known for her kindness and her deeds. Very well said. Right? A lady in a different nation. She's not even pretty. A little old lady. Okay? Why does the whole world know of her? It's because of her kindness. She came into a community of lepers who were ignored and there was no love, there was no medicine to cure it at that time. She decided as a nurse that she was going to love on them, the love of Christ. That even if they died, they were going to die knowing the love of Christ. So she decided to pour love into their life, and all of a sudden, it started to cure them. Love cures? You never know. When a person feels loved, it starts to change the appearance of how they view life. I think that's what it is. Okay? Every one of us long for love. Every single one of us. More so the ones that are wounded and needy. Right? Or somebody who's having some sort of a disease that they're fighting. And that's why Mother Teresa is now known as Mother Teresa. She was just Teresa before, now we gave her the title of Mother. Okay? She now deserves greatness. Mark chapter 12 verses 41 talks about a widow who gave 2 pennies in the offering. And then there was this other guy who was so wealthy, and he came and he's like putting all this cash in front of Jesus into the little offering box. Whereas this little lady is so ashamed of what she has that she's putting 2 pennies because that's all she had. And Jesus said she gave all she had. She has a greater reward in heaven than the one next to her he gave out his inheritance. And there's actually a story that this guy who lived in a mansion, when he died and went to heaven, Peter met him at the pearly gates. Obviously, this is a made-up story. And so he went, and then Peter was like, yeah, let me give you a tour of heaven, and this is this villa, and full of mansions. And he's so excited, man. I thought I lived in a mansion, but nothing like what you guys have up here in heaven. So he was so excited that he was going to go into a big mansion, right? And finally, after all the tour, Peter escorted him into a tiny little hut. And so the guy was so disappointed. He's like, what's up with this? Why do I get a hut? He said, with all the money you've sent to heaven and blessed people with, this is all that can come up. And so all you get here is a hut, So I believe, that lady who gave 2 pennies would have most likely had a mansion because that's all she had. And she gave all she had. So your attitude is so important in how much you give. Okay, when you give to the Lord. Rockefeller, anyone know who that is?
Yeah.
Why do you know that?
He was the wealthiest man in history. $368 billion in today's money.
Absolutely. $368 billion, one person who made, right? In today's money.
Yep.
How much did I say people gave all together in America? $373 billion. So one man made all of that money by finding what? Oil. That's right. So if you guys ever, I love history. Rockefeller is one of the guys that I adore. He's got his issues, but he was brilliant in business, okay? And all the oil that was found he was one of the first ones to invent it and bring scientific research into finding oil on how to use it, right? So Rockefeller, after he was gone, he wanted to make sure the funds are allocated to education, libraries, and all these different charitable trusts. So people that are able to give can give and still impact generations after generations. Rockefeller was several generations ago. What's your name, sir?
Sean.
Sean. Why does Sean know about it here? Why?
Study on the history.
Because he studied about this man in history. Because of his invention, and he was one of the wealthiest men ever alive. Right? But I know him because he was one of the most charitable businessmen in America. Right? People are known to give when they're successful. Facebook found it. He and his wife give billions of dollars every year. They believe in charity. So when you have money, it's easy to give, right? But the attitude that it comes from is what matters to the Lord more than how much you give. One last thing I want to say. I said, there are so many homeless people my dad gives to recently. Just like Daniel said, it's kind of hard when you're looking at a person on the side of the street to be like, can I really give this guy money? So my little brother Moses and my dad, they were going on a walk, and I was right behind them, and my dad found a homeless guy. My dad never goes past a homeless person and does not give. This man has so much compassion, and so he just, he looked into his wallet and he didn't have any cash. So he asked my brother if he had any, and my brother said, all I have was 5s and 10s, I don't have any $1, My dad's like, so give me your biggest bill. And my brother's like, no, I'm not going to give that homeless guy $10. You don't know what he's going to do with it. So I'm watching all this, one generation teaching the next generation, right? And my dad said, Moses, it doesn't matter what he does with the money he is taking from you or you are giving to him. You are at a place where you can give, and he's at a place where he needs it. So the intention here is that he's asking you, and you're able to give, so you give. What he does with it, he is accountable to the Lord for that. What you do with your money when somebody's asking, when they're in need, you're accountable to the Lord for that. Man, that will preach, right? I was like, I observed that, and ever since then, I don't even think when somebody asks if I have the cash, I give. Because it's not my business what they do with it. And sometimes if I have the time, I go buy them a meal. Okay? Or whatever, I ask them, what do you need to, go buy it. But for the most part, it's easier to be able to give. So speaking of $10 and $1, $1 bill after it worked its life and it was all torn, so there, getting rid of the circulation and shredding it in the box. And so, do you know that money after it's been blown out, they actually shred it, make new money? Okay. So I said it was going through the shredder right next to it. It had a $50 bill right next to it. So the $50 bill was just reminiscing all the places it has been, Las Vegas, and then all these parties and all these amazing places that it's been to. And then all of a sudden, the $1 bill goes, man, you've had a pretty good life. You've been to Vegas, you've been to parties, you've been to all these amazing places. All the places that I've been are one church after another. I've been in the Church of Christ, I've been in the Assembly of God, I've been in the Methodist Church, and then I'm in Presbyterian Church, and the $50 bill goes, what's a church? You know, and so, okay, now you just got it.
Wow.
It is so sad. So, you know, when giving, I don't know, maybe $1 is all you can afford. You know, I don't know what you're able to afford, but it's the attitude of your heart that matters the most. Like I said, a smile can go a long way. Jeremy always blesses me with jokes, you know? So I always count on him for that. And so, you know, you have different things. You play drums. You know, you have different things that you're able to do to bless others, and I want to encourage you to continue to be generous with whatever it is that you have that you can do to others. Okay?
All right, that was awesome. Epic means above the ordinary, extraordinary. Generosity means above the ordinary, extraordinary. For my own life, I have seen the change in my heart from my perspective and what I did. And I can tell every single one of you guys, the people that benefited the most from me and my generous moments were my family and loved ones. Because when I was generous to people on the street, when I was generous to people that were annoying me, I learned how to be so much more loving towards the people that I truly love. So it may seem like we're just giving to them, but the big reward, you know, you said we get blessed by God. I can love my family and Priya and my friends so much better now that I have allowed myself to love the people on the street and the people that don't really deserve it. So just keep that in mind. That blessing is a promise. It is true. Maybe you won't get like a whole lot of money, but if you can be the best, you know, father, mother, sister. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it, guys. This is our epic party. We're going to have an outing and on the second Saturday of July. So you guys enjoy the rest of the party. Appreciate the attention.